think we're ready to go. Are you guys excited?
Yeah! I'm very excited. Me too.
Welcome to History with Kids. Today, we're telling the story of Julius Caesar's wars in Gaul, what we now call France. We should alert you, this episode is about ancient warfare, which includes violence and death. We're not trying to scare anyone, but this may not be for sensitive listeners. Now, on to the story. Now, kids, Caesar was a Roman. What do you know about the Romans?
They like to conquer, I guess.
That's a great answer, Scoops. What about you, Noodle?
I know that they most of the time win battles.
Yes, these are both true facts. The Romans like to conquer, and they usually were pretty good at it, especially early on. How about the Gauls? What do we know about the Gauls?
They like to charge.
They like to charge. That's true. They do like to charge.
They don't like to work on a team.
They don't always work as a team. These are excellent, excellent points. And both of these points will be true, as we'll see in the story that Julius Caesar is going to tell us. Now, let me give you a little bit of context on this story, all right? The Gauls live up in modern-day France, and the Romans at this time were mostly living in Italy, near where Rome is. The Gauls had invaded Italy. They had attacked Italy earlier, several generations earlier. And actually, at one point, some Gauls had even conquered Rome itself. They didn't try to occupy it. They didn't try to control it, but they took money from it. It was very hard for the people in Rome. So if you're a Roman, you're a little bit afraid of the Gauls.
But wouldn't you also want to get payback?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And you also want to get payback. And if you're Julius Caesar, there's a couple other things you also want. Because Julius Caesar is a young man. He's very powerful in Rome, but he wants to have even more power. And he's been spending a lot of money to try to help make other people his friends in Rome. So he's in debt. So if you're Julius Caesar, you need to make a lot of money to pay off your debts. And you want to win big to help your political career. So everything that's going to happen is shaped by those goals. This book, Caesar's Account of the Gallic Wars, and I'm reading the Loeb translation, was originally written, we think, as letters back to Rome that were meant to be read out loud, just like I'm reading it loud to you. And in these letters, Caesar was explaining what was going on to his supporters and detractors back in the capital city. The first book of Julius Caesar's account of the wars in Gaul famously begins like so. Gaul is a whole divided into 3 parts. Also translated sometimes as, all Gaul is divided into 3 parts. What matters for our purposes is that there's a group called the Helvetians, and the Helvetians are on the move. There's a lot of Helvetians, thousands of Helvetians on the move towards the Roman province in France, Provence. And it was the only part of France, or Gaul, that the Romans controlled at the time. So if a big group of Helvetians, which is a type of Gaul, are headed to the Roman territory, what does that mean? Is that a good thing for the Romans?
It's a bad thing, and it means that Caesar can conquer them.
Yeah, excellent, excellent insight. So as Caesar hears that the Helvetians are on the go, he heads out of Rome really quickly and arrives in Geneva and gets as many soldiers as he can at the time, orders the bridge at Geneva to be broken down so that the Helvetians can't cross it. And Caesar is basically trying to figure out how to block the Helvetians. That's his plan. The Helvetians learn that this is happening and send a messenger to Caesar saying, oh no, we just want to go through the Roman province. We don't want to cause any trouble. Let us go through. It's not going to be a big deal.
Trouble.
That's right. Caesar agrees with you, Noodle. Caesar says, let me think about it. Now, why does he say, let me think about it, if he already knows that he doesn't want to let the Helvetians in?
Because that's stalling.
Correct. And why does he need to stall?
Because he can get a big enough army.
Wow, you figured that out very well. You figured that out, Scoopy, better than the Helvetians did, I think. Because the Helvetians seem to believe Caesar, but actually Caesar was doing exactly what you said. He was using the time to get more soldiers. He also built a wall, 16 feet high. That's, I don't know, a 2-story building, and a trench in front of it, all the way from Lake Geneva to the Jura Range, which is 19 miles. So Caesar is building basically a wall as big as a 2-story building with a trench in front of it for 19 miles. Yeah, Scoops?
There's one problem. That costs money, and I thought he was in debt.
The soldiers will do it with the equipment they have. So if you have the soldiers, the Roman soldiers are basically like soldiers and also construction engineers at the same time. That's part of what the Roman soldiers had as their special abilities.
Materials. How do they get the material?
They'll cut down trees, they'll use rocks. Maybe there'll be a bit where there's a rocky outcropping or boulder and they'll incorporate that into the wall. They're very resourceful. The Romans were extremely good at engineering and building things. So that's an advantage that they have over really everyone else that they're surrounded by. Okay, so Caesar is building this big wall and has a lot of soldiers with him. The Helvetians arrive and they try to break through this wall, sometimes at day, but more often at nighttime. They make boats, they join boats together to make like a kind of an almost bridge, or they ford the river in places, but they can't get over this wall and this trench. So the Helvetians give up on the original route that they were planning. So then the Helvetians try a different route. Caesar pulls together more Roman soldiers and blocks them. And so the Helvetians have to reroute again. Now the Helvetians are going through the territory of a group called the Aedui. Aedui. We're going to hear a bunch about the Aedui. So that's a name you're going to want to remember. The Aedui send people to ask Caesar for help because the Aedui don't want the Helvetii coming through their area any more than the Romans want the Helvetii coming through their area. Caesar decides, you know what? I got to take the fight to the Helvetians. Instead of waiting for them to attack in different places and blocking them in different places, I have to actually defeat them and convince them not to try to come into our areas. The Helvetians are crossing a river called the Arar, and Caesar learns that about 3/4 of the Helvetians have gone across, but a quarter are still on the other side. And so Caesar sneak attacks the quarter of the Helvetians that haven't crossed yet. A lot of them run away. So that's Caesar's first real fight with the Helvetians. It goes very well. Now, if you're the Helvetians, this is a very sad thing because you're just trying to find somewhere good to live. The area you used to be living in, there's too much violence and fighting, and there were internal reasons why you wanted to move, but you don't want to be sneak attacked by Caesar. That's not what you're asking for. So for the Romans, it's a good thing. For the Helvetians, it's a bad thing. Yeah.
Why don't they just make an agreement? Because they didn't ever actually talk. What if they just talk to each other to make an agreement?
Well, it's an interesting question. When the Gauls had attacked Rome a long time ago, before this story, the Gauls and the Romans had an agreement that the Romans had to pay a certain amount of gold for the Gauls to go away. This is some context just to give you some answer to your good question. And the Romans at the time, this was before the time of Caesar, put the money that they needed to, the gold, on the scales, and the scales balanced. And then the Gaulish chief famously put his sword on the other side of the scale, basically saying, nope, you need to add more gold equal to the weight of my sword. And the Romans said, that's not fair. We had a deal. And the Gaulish chief said, woe to the vanquished. That means you lost, too bad. I won, I make the rules. That's kind of the rules of Gaulish society and really of a lot of the ancient world society back then. So if you're the Romans, if you're Julius Caesar, you've heard those stories from your parents and grandparents. And so do you feel like you can trust the Gauls?
No.
Correct. His question was, why don't they make a deal and talk and have peace? Which was a good question. Going back to our main story, Caesar has defeated about a quarter of the Gauls, not even that, because some of them run away and rejoin the main army. And then Caesar has a bridge built over the river. The Helvetii are concerned. Caesar has just sneak attacked some of their soldiers. He defeated some. And also that it had taken them 20 days to cross this river because they had to build boats and go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, whereas Caesar built a bridge in a single day. Right. And again, you're seeing that the Romans are very good at building things. They're very good engineers. And that really helps them a lot, that they can build a bridge and cross a river in one day, whereas the Helvetii have to take 20 days to go across.
Question.
Yes.
Well, more like 2 questions. Why didn't they just swim across the river?
They have a lot of stuff with them. They have horses in some cases. They have carts. They have food. Their families are with them. And the river's a serious river. It's not safe to swim across.
So, why did Julius Caesar personally go and attack? Why didn't he just send out patrols to go attack? Because if you personally attack, that's making danger for you.
That's an excellent point. And it's going to be something that we'll see over and over again in this story. If you save that thought, when we get to the Germans, there'll be a very good illustration of why Caesar needs to be brave to convince his soldiers to be brave.
If you die, I'll die with you.
Correct. Good summary. That's exactly what Caesar is saying. So Caesar tries now to talk to the Helvetii, because the Helvetii are getting a little worried about Caesar, and they send a messenger, and they say, "What do you want, Caesar?" And Caesar says, "I'll make peace to you if you give me hostages that I will kill if you break your word." In other words, we'll make a deal. You'll give me your kids, and if you don't honor the deal, I'll be allowed to kill your kids. And the Helvetii say no. So Caesar says, "Okay, then I can't trust you." So the Helvetii army moves away. Caesar follows them with his army. Now, Caesar's scouts one day tell him that there's an opportunity, that the enemy, the Helvetii, are right under a hill, and that the Romans realize that there's a way to the top of the hill. So Caesar sends one of his generals to have 2 legions go in the night to the top of the hill, and then Caesar will attack from the main road, and that they could basically surround the Helvetii that way. But at dawn, as Caesar is marching, his scouts tell him, "Oh no, the Helvetii must have figured it out because they seem to be on top of the hill now." So Caesar doesn't attack. Turns out his scouts were confused. Caesar's army was on the top of the hill. His scouts didn't see it very clearly and thought that it was the Helvetii rather than his own soldiers. So the Helvetii get away when Caesar could have probably surrounded them and attacked them there. And now Caesar's running out of food. So he doesn't have enough food to be able to keep following the Helvetii deeper and deeper into their territory. So Caesar turns around and starts to head back to where he can get more food supply. But the Helvetians also turn around and they start to follow him. Maybe they think that Caesar's afraid of them and that they can defeat Caesar now. So as soon as Caesar sees that they're following him, he draws his troops to the nearest hill and sends some horses to check the enemy's charge, if the enemies are going to charge him, the Helvetii. And Caesar forms up his legions in 3 lines halfway up the hill, and the Helvetii attack. Now, as the battle begins, to our conversation a moment ago, Caesar sends his own horse and all the other horses away from the battle so that none of the Romans will be able to run away very well, and that all the Romans will be endangered together. So Caesar is sending a message to his soldiers: "I'm fighting with you. I'm not running away. Look, I sent my horse away. We're all in this together." How would you feel in this moment if you were in the Roman legion and the Helvetii were attacking?
Scared.
Yeah. What about you, Scoops?
Proud that I would be doing this for my country, and also scared.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think probably people were feeling all of those things. So in the beginning, Roman legionaries are on the hill, so they have an advantage. The Gauls have to run uphill, and the Romans throw a volley of javelins downhill at the Gauls and take their swords and charge down the hill into the Gauls. And the Gauls are having a tricky situation here. A lot of the Gallic shields have javelins in them, which makes them heavy and hard to use. So some of the Gauls throw their shields down. The fight is on. And now the Gauls start to retreat back towards their own hill, about a mile away. So now the Gauls are on top of a hill. The Romans are the ones having to follow. But 15,000 additional Gauls join the fight from the side. And so now it's just a total mess of a situation. You have some of the Helvetii on top of the hill. You have some of the Romans going up the hill. You got these other Gallic groups, the Boii and the Tulingi, I'm probably mispronouncing that, attacking the Romans from the side. You have the Helvetians starting to come down from the hill again. The Romans are fighting in multiple directions, and the fight is fierce and long. And it goes on, and the Helvetii have some of their carts on the top of the hill that they're using like a wall. Some of them are hiding under the carts and are shooting out darts. Yeah.
I would have made them charge down the hill so that the people that were running up would have to run away from the carts.
That's a good idea. In a valley where it's narrow, that has been done in history, and often it can work very well. In a hill where you can go up or down any part of the hill, it's not as effective because you can just step off to the side and the car goes past you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but not a bad thought.
So it would break, and then when I was in the plot, you couldn't have.
That's also a good point. These are their possessions. Their whole lives are in those carts. So eventually the Helvetii break and run away. And many of them have been defeated in battle as well.
But what about Roman?
Some of the Romans have been defeated. The Romans have better armor and they're fighting in a more disciplined, organized way. So they are taking some casualties, but not as many. So now the Helvetii run away. The Romans won a very hard first fight against the Gauls. As the Romans are chasing, the Helvetii don't have enough food now, and they surrender. And they throw themselves, it says, at Caesar's feet. That means they basically say, we give up. Caesar has defeated the Helvetii. What do you think this means for the rest of Gaul? If you were a Gallic leader and you heard that Caesar had done this, this Roman army has just appeared out of nowhere, has attacked far into Gaul, has defeated this big, strong group, the Helvetii, and you don't know what the Romans are going to do next. So if you're a Gallic chieftain and you heard about this, so what would you do?
Try to make a peace treaty with Caesar.
Yes, that's right. And why would you want that?
Because you just realize how strong Caesar is. You want a peace treaty with him, so you don't have to go on a blood treaty.
A peace treaty is when two groups or people agree not to attack each other. And so, Noodle, what do you think? If you were a chieftain in Gaul, what would you be feeling right now?
Flowing.
Correct. But would you also see maybe an opportunity if you could make a deal with Caesar?
Yes.
Yes. That is what the chieftains of Gaul are feeling. They're a little bit afraid, but they're also saying, hey, this new kid on the block, these Romans, maybe they can help us defeat our own enemies. So they go to Caesar and say, hey, what is it, Noodle?
But first, you need to know what are Caesar's enemies. Because if one of Caesar's enemies are also your enemies, and then maybe they could say, hey, we'll help you defeat this.
You know, you're thinking in a very clever way, Noodle, very clever way. This guy, Diviciacus, I'm surely mispronouncing that. He's one of the Aedui. That's the group that was on the same team as Rome early on. He says to Caesar, here's what he says. This is a quote. In all Gaul, there are two parties. In one of them, the Aedui, my people, have primacy. In the other, the Arverni. For many years, there was a vehement struggle between the two for domination. Then it came about that the Arverni and the Sicani summoned the Germans to aid for a price. About 15,000 of them crossed the Rhine River in the first instance. Then, when those fierce barbarians had got a liking for the farmlands, the civilization, and the wealth of the Gauls, more were brought over. And at the present time, there are about 120,000 of them in Gaul. Unless some means of assistance is to be found in Caesar and in the Roman people, all the Gauls will need to do what the Helvetii have done, to emigrate, to seek another place to live, other abodes far from the Germans, and risk any fortune that may befall them. You, Caesar, by your own and your army's influence, or by your late victory, or by the name of the Roman people, can prevent the crossing of a larger host of Germans over the Rhine, and defend the whole of Gaul. So, Noodle, what is this Aedui prince really saying? It's kind of what you said earlier.
Wait, I forgot what may I say?
Yes, Skippy.
He's saying that the Germans are basically attacking us, so can you please help us defeat the Germans?
Correct. That's exactly right, Scoops. He's saying the Germans are kind of your enemy too. They're the reason why the Helvetii maybe had to move. They're going to cause other trouble. So we should be a team against the Germans. That's what he's saying. And so Caesar says, yeah, that makes sense. I can understand that the Aedui, who are our allies, they're on our team. They're going to have trouble from these Germans. And also these Germans are coming over more and more into this part of Gaul. And that's dangerous for not just the people in Gaul, but for the Romans. Because if these Germans keep attacking, they're going to eventually take all of Gaul, and then they're going to break forth down into Italy and attack Rome itself. So Caesar says, all right, I'm going to go confront the Germans. Now, of course, remember, Caesar's still looking for money, for glory, so he kind of wants a fight. But in this case, the Aedui and Caesar realize that they have a shared goal in defeating the Germans. So Caesar goes off towards the Germans. As he's marching towards the Germans, his army is hearing stories about how strong the Germans are. Oh yeah, those Germans, you can't even look at them. Their eyes are so fierce. And so Caesar's soldiers are hearing this over and over again. And what do you think happens to them?
scared out of their pants.
Yes, they get scared out of their pants. Actually, they stay in their pants, but they are very scared. First, the younger soldiers get scared. Then the soldiers in command of little groups. Then the others who followed Caesar from Rome, who were friends of his, but were not very good at war. And so all these different groups say, "Oh, Caesar, I gotta get out of here. I need to get back to Rome to check my farm now, please. Bye." And it's kind of getting to be a problem, though. And sometimes these people are just starting to cry. Like everyone's marching on the road, and some of these guys just start bursting into tears. Or they're hiding in their tents to complain, "Oh, my life is so hard." Do you think that this is good for the energy of the army or not good for the energy of the army?
Not good.
Not good. That's right. Even now, the more senior soldiers are getting worried because everyone in the army is sort of convincing everyone else that these Germans are super scary. Caesar has to stop this. So he makes a bunch of points to the army. And I'm not going to go through every point Caesar makes, but what would you say if you were Caesar?
I would say that everyone should hold together, and Rome is very powerful. Look, it stopped a whole tribe from invading Rome.
That's a great point.
And the tribe was way more people than however many.
Well, there's 120,000 Germans, so there's a big group of Germans.
But they can still, get them.
True.
So maybe like Julius Caesar says, look, we've defeated a lot there. And even know that we can't defeat everyone, we could still give it a try. And if you guys die, I'll die with you.
Wow, powerful points. Caesar does make some of those points, and he makes one more point, a very logical point. Caesar says, hey, we just defeated the Helvetii. The Helvetii often had defeated the Germans. So why are we scared of the Germans? We've defeated people who defeated them. So we should actually be feeling pretty good about this. To your point just now, Noodle, Caesar also says this. This is a quote. Even if no one else follows, I shall march with the 10th Legion alone. I have no doubt about its allegiance. So Caesar's saying, if all the rest of you leave, I'm going with 1 legion forward anyway. This army says, oh, okay, you've embarrassed us into staying with you, and you've made some good points, and we're feeling better now. So Caesar goes up, and he goes to the Germans, and the Germans say, hey, let's have a conversation. And Caesar says, all right, well, you got to go back to Germany. We don't want you in Gaul. The Germans say, but we're in Gaul at the invitation of some of the Gauls, and we've won victories against other Gauls fair and square. We're allowed to stay here. Caesar and the German leader have a direct one-on-one meeting on a little hill on horses so they can run away if things get, tricky. And the German leader makes one more point because Caesar's been talking about how great the Aedui are, the group that's allied to the Romans, and how Caesar has to defend the Aedui. But the German leader says something that's actually pretty smart. He says, you say that you're the brothers of the Aedui, but I'm not such a barbarian, and I'm not so unaware of what's going on in the world to know that in the last campaign, the Aedui didn't actually really help you at all. Are they really such good friends of yours? I think you're here to crush Gaul and crush me. I don't think this is really about helping the Aedui. Unless you leave with your army, Caesar, I gotta kind of view you as my enemy, who's just looking for a pretext, a fake reason to have a fight. And by the way, Caesar, if I killed you, a lot of nobles and leaders back in Rome would be pretty happy about that. Because I know that because I'm in touch with many of them by messengers. There's people trying to, get me to kill you. So don't pretend that what's good for Caesar is what Rome wants, necessarily. Those two things might not always be the same. And by the way, if you leave, I'll pay you. What do you guys think of this offer from the German leader?
I think it's, I can't leave, I'll pay you, is what actually makes it. Because he's trying to get money to pay his debts.
But what does that tell you about what the German leader is feeling? If he's willing to pay Caesar to get him to leave?
He's feeling like Caesar could actually defeat him.
Excellent. That's right.
Well, the bad thing is, maybe the Helvetii was trying to attack again because Caesar didn't keep its promise to help them defeat Germans.
Or maybe the Aedui, you mean? That was the group Caesar made the deal with. Yeah, it could get tricky. You're right. If Caesar backs away from his deal, you're making a good point. So that's another reason why Caesar maybe can't take the deal. All right. So Caesar's like, we're going to fight. Caesar notices where the Germans have their camp. And so Caesar builds his own camp. 2/3 of his soldiers are just standing there with their shields and swords and everything, while the last third dig the camp and build the camp. So Caesar's like ready for fighting at any moment. So Caesar builds his camp. The Germans don't attack. Caesar's wondering why. He has some prisoners he's captured from the Germans, not very many, but some of the German scouts and whatnot. And so Caesar asks them, what's going on? Why aren't the Germans fighting? He learns the reason, that some of the German ladies with the army, the elite fancy noble ladies, use lots and divination. That means they throw sticks on the ground, or maybe they kill a chicken and look at the insides of it to decide whether the gods want the German army to fight that day. And those matrons, those elite women, noble ladies of the German army, have been saying every day that the gods forbid the Germans to fight that day, and they'll lose if they fight. And in fact, until the new moon comes, the Germans will lose if a battle happens. So this is very useful for Caesar to know. The next day, they attack immediately, so fiercely when the signal's given that the battle is immediately underway. And there's clashing of swords and shields.
But they sneak attacks, right?
No, I mean, it's both sides were ready to fight. It wasn't a sneak attack, but
That's ready.
the Germans, that's right, because the Germans are thinking the gods have said we're going to lose this battle. So even though the Germans are fighting, in the back of their mind, the whole time they're fighting, they're thinking, we're going to lose, we're going to lose, we're going to lose.
Mindset for when you're in a war.
That's right. And Caesar's soldiers do some very courageous things, because I'm sure Caesar has given a speech where he's told the soldiers all about this. So the Germans have shields, which protect them from the sword attack. But some of the Roman soldiers are so brave that they leap up and tear the German shields down from the German hands and attack the Germans with their sword from above the Germans, which is a very brave thing to do. Why? Because you have to be holding with your hands the German shield, ripping it down. The Germans are going to be resisting that. You're right up in their face. Then you take out your sword and you stab them. I mean, you're looking at their faces, you're fighting them. They might be stabbing you too. So both sides honestly have to be very brave in this kind of battle. You got to be really resilient to fight in ancient battles like this. You might die. These are very dangerous battles for both sides. A lot of them died. The battle's going back and forth. The left side of the German army breaks, gives up, runs away. But the right side of the German army has a lot of soldiers in it, and it's actually doing pretty well. And then a Roman cavalry commander, that means a guy riding a horse, noticed this. And because he can move faster because he's on a horse, he sends the reinforcements, the backup third line, to support the struggling Roman troops where they're struggling. Now, this is showing an important part about how the Romans fought. They have a third of their army waiting to see where they're needed. And so when this Roman cavalry officer sees that there's a problem on the right side of the battlefield, he can send the reserves, the last third of the army, who are fresh, they're rested. This is the Romans. Germans don't fight this way. The Germans, everyone just charges in. It's unusual in the ancient world to be organized enough that a third of the army is just waiting in the battle. But as soon as they're told, all right, this is where we need you to go, they go. And so everyone else is tired at this point. They've been fighting a long time. And my understanding is that the third line of the Roman army was also a little bit older. They were more experienced. They had been through more situations. Frankly, when they're a little older, their judgment will be better, but their bodies might be a little bit not as strong. So that's okay late in the battle when everyone is tired. And the judgment is very important because they'll know where to go and what to do to win the day. And that's what happens. And so Caesar wins. So Caesar has now beaten two groups. He's beaten the Helvetii and he's beaten this group of Germans. And he's done it in one summer, right? Because it's been less than a year since this whole situation began. That's a lot for any army. And so now the summer is getting late and Caesar withdraws his army, brings it back home a little earlier than needed even, away from the German border. He goes back towards the part of Gaul that's closer to Rome. And that is the end of book 1, the first part of Caesar's story of the wars in Gaul. Of course, the story continues with book 2, which we'll get to next. Yes, Scooby-Doo?
I like this story.
That's great. Noodle, what's your review?
I mean, it's kind of violent.
It is a little violent. I gotta warn you, the next chapter is going to be violent too. So it's going to stay violent all the way through, but it's going to be very interesting.
What? How does the other part of Gaul get involved?
Well, we're going to find out next time. Once you go into Gaul, it seems, you don't come out very easily, especially if you're Caesar trying to pay your debts and trying to get glory.